Second part, how do you get one of these jobs right out of college? So this is really meant for people who are like yourselves, right? You're in college now and you potentially want to work in this field and get one of these jobs. Okay, so this was my same one slide as before, right? Portfolio, connections, and internship. So ideally, this is how it should work. So the equation here is you have a portfolio and you add connections to that. So portfolio plus connections leads to internship, and the internships lead to full-time job opportunity. So this is like a highly idealized flow of how things should work. Let's start with the portfolio. Like this is probably the most fundamental or the base part, right? Because everything starts with that. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on that. And this is the thing that you can start thinking about like right now, because as you can tell, it will take time to build. So here's the basics of portfolio. So basically what a portfolio is that it's just a personal website. So like if you don't have a personal website yet, it's pretty easy to start one up now. There are many services that you can just pay for to just host a website. There's, nowadays in 2019, there's actually really many easy ways, both free and paid, for you to just create a website without even writing any code and just like register a domain name. Usually just using your name or some version of your name is just the easiest. Just keep it simple. Then what you want to put in this portfolio are class projects with design components. So many of our CogSci HCI classes have design and project components. That's usually the first part of people's portfolios because that's how people get into the field. And then you want to look beyond class projects, right? So you want to maybe volunteer to help with on-campus groups. If you have friends with projects, if you have friends who are maybe starting companies or working in some kind of organization, just volunteer to help them out, right? If people you're living with, your dorm mates, your apartment mates, you have to really be resourceful about finding this sort of work, right? Because there's not like a curriculum of like, oh, you just take these classes and just do the work. We do have classes that can get you started with class projects, but you really want to go kind of above and beyond outside. So another just kind of more advice, just look beyond building standard websites or mobile apps and stuff. So just think about, building a portfolio. You can make posters, for events, art pieces, event flyers, marketing slides. If you have friends who are doing, marketing or business stuff and they need help with design for their slides. These are all just kind of things to think about, right? At first, when you're just starting about building a design portfolio, you just want to like have raw materials to put into it. And it doesn't matter what yet because you just want to start building up something. Another thing you can do is there are like design contests. They're sometimes called design sprints or hackathons, design challenges or contests. Sometimes these are online. Sometimes these are like in person locally, like organizations or meetups would have those. They're just, again, just events that give you a prompt or give you some motivation. Sometimes companies sponsor a hackathon or sponsor a challenge and stuff. Again, it's just to get you to like do something with some kind of structure. All right, you can do this all on your own, but it's nice to have structure. You can also work part-time, right? So if you can, if you're doing part-time work, if you can get paid work, that's awesome, right? Because you get paid while you're in school. If you can work as a freelance designer for, a local company that might want to hire students to do some things. If you have friends with startups that they want to just hire you part-time on an hourly basis. A lot of this is just to build up experience, right? So other ideas, so UCSD, we have the basement, we have the startup accelerator, the Rady, the business school also have these kind of startup kinds of things as well that people have kind of gotten involved in. And just think about other student groups. And again, once you get a design internship, you can try to put that in your portfolio, try to write about that as much as possible. And then you want to look at your friends and alumni's portfolios and look at their resumes, look at their LinkedIn pages, basically just look at theirs as examples of how to make yours. And this is a theme that will come up throughout this talk, is that because this field changes so fast, like, you don't, even the people who helped me with this talk, they got jobs 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, like, their LinkedIn pages or portfolios or resumes, like, the words on there are just in a different language, right? Like it's really, things have to be so recent. So like the most powerful thing you can do here is to find people who are like a year ahead of you, 2 years ahead of you, 3 years ahead of you, and look at what they did because they're the most up to date, right? Like once people are many, many years removed, the field just has evolved and changed so fast. So just, and all these things are public. The great thing about all these portfolios and resumes and like the GitHub profiles and the LinkedIn pages is that they're all public by definition, right? By definition, people put them up on the web so that companies can find them, other people can find them. So there's many, many good examples that you can find. Okay, so I'll give you an example right now. So again, there's a link here for more advice here that one of my TAs gave. So this is David Wu. He's one of my TAs for one of my HCI courses. And here's an example of his portfolio. So a design portfolio is basically a website. And the website just has a short intro. So he just has a little short intro here of who he is. Keep it really short, basically. And a series of what's called case studies. So here's his website. Basically, I zoomed out, right? So there's, again, you don't need to read the text. So basically, there's a short intro, it's a little long here, and then there's just like a series of projects that he's done. So this is a Lyft, this is an internship with the company Lyft, this is another internship, and this is a class project. So internship, class project. So let's focus on this class project down here. And so every one is just kind of a thumbnail of what they've done, and then when you click on it, it goes to a whole page. So a case study, this is what I teach in my classes. A case study is basically just a single long web page. Think about it as like a long blog post, right? And this web page, this is David's for his class project. So, I mean, it's just scrolling, right? So again, you don't need to read it, but basically start on top, scroll, scroll, scroll. What this web page is, it's a web page of the design process. Remember, like in the class project, you had the like 8 stages or whatever. This is basically those stages just laid out as a story that he can explain, saying, here's the problem, here's the space, here we did our user interviews, here we started prototyping, we started making some mock-ups, we started making some paper things, we did some user testing, we did some more testing, blah, 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 and I mean, it keeps going on and on. And the idea here is that this is what people are going to look at. Like, this is the main thing. And, you know, in my classes, we basically teach you how to make one of these things, because this is the end product people are really looking for. Right? I mean, yes, you know, having a landing page is great. You know, having a web page, you know, about yourself, you can put your resume in there. That's great. And having the project listed is great. But really, what's really going to get you the job is how you write these case studies right here. And this is the core of your portfolio. So if he had, so hypothetically, you know, well, this is actually real, hypothetically. So with the class project, with this case study, this is how he was able to get his product design internship at the company Lyft. And, you know, of course, it's good if you have other projects, or it's good if you have more experience and you're going to be more competitive on the job market. But my TAs have shown that even starting out with a class project, if you write it up well, that could get your foot in the door as your first internship. And then and then you build up more, right? You get your foot in the door, and then you do internship, and then you have more internships listed on there. And these projects are more real world because you're working with real companies and such. But it successfully happens, right? This can happen if you write it up well. But here's one of the most common, I guess, misconceptions or such, or things to avoid, is that, you know, this is his final design, like his final product of for the class project, right? So, you know, there's a bunch of screenshots. You can imagine making a video or a demo, or even like having a working app or something, right? So imagine, like, you know, if people think about, oh, what's a portfolio? I just need to show off my projects, right? I got to show off my projects. What's a project I did for class? We made an app to help people do X, and then let's show the app. It's great. We showed the app. Here's some screenshots. Here's the video. Here's a cool demo of it working. Maybe if you're actually coding it, you actually show the real thing, right? Like, here's a real working app that like uses Google Maps or your location or whatever. And great, it's really impressive. It actually works. It's really cool, right? It works. It's great. And your portfolio piece, like for that project, is here's my final result, right? So if you do that, you know, no internship, no job. So why is that? So you're like, well, that's weird. I showed a thing, it worked, it's real, you know, I made it, I coded it up, it's real. You know, how come I can't get a job from this? I'm not saying this is bad. This is still better than not having it, right? Showing your final product is better than not having a project. But you're going to be much less competitive than people who show process, because basically what people are hiring you for when you're doing these UX or design internships is they don't care what you made. They care the process you went through and the idea that you can actually go through this design process. So like, this is what you need and not that. So the way I put it, I'll put it in a few slides later, but here's some more advanced things about portfolios just for reference. So justify and critique your own process is the most important thing. So like, this is, the word process shows up everywhere in this talk. Basically, you want to justify what you did, how you did it, why you made each design decision, why it matters in the end. Your project is really just a vehicle for you to tell a story about what you did in the process. This is also really important for dispelling the myth that design is only about visuals or aesthetics or making stuff look good. So the word design is very overloaded, right? It's a very colloquial word. And when people maybe just like go up to someone at Starbucks or on the street and you ask them about design, they'll be like, oh yeah, like people who make our logos or banners or make, art or stuff. And like, yeah, that's one definition of it, but a more general definition of design is really about making stuff that benefits real users, right? It's actually about making stuff that benefits real people and not just about aesthetics, right? I mean, visuals are obviously important, but the process is way more important than that. So in order to do this, you have to be able to look at your project and explain why you designed it that way. And that now you can hopefully see why this is so important to have a case study that writes out your process. You also want to have a compelling and personal point of view that makes your work stand out. This is a little bit more abstract, but I'm just going to put it here for reference. But basically, you want to make this case study, or at least introduce it with something that is unique to you, right? It's like, why did you do this project, right? It wasn't just because someone handed it to you. Like you were personally motivated because you really identify with this user population, or you have a parent, you have grandparents or parents or friends who have a need for this sort of product, and you're motivated to do this, or you have some kind of a unique personal background. Again, this is all just about telling your own story. Fine print down here. So employers have seen the same class projects over and over again, so you want to go beyond those. So again, even if you're doing a class project, ideally in an advanced mode, you want to show that there's some kind of personal touch to it that's not just something that anyone could have done, right? It's something that's unique to you. More advanced things, it's often better to show how you improved an existing real-world product rather than making your own from scratch. So in fact, in my intro class, our project is to improve an existing product, and we're not having students design everything from scratch, because that's basically what you do in the real world, right? Like when you're in a company, you're much, much more likely to be extending an existing product, right? No one's going to hire you to be like, let's just make a new thing from scratch, right? Whereas if you think about when you're doing class projects or hobby projects, you're often trying to make something on your own from scratch. And I would encourage you to think about extending or improving something that already exists, because that's what people are actually doing in the real world. In your portfolio, highlight the most relevant projects for your job role. So if you want to focus on a certain part of the design process, just make those more clear. Example portfolios, you can even just search these on Google. So there's a site called Cofolios and Bestfolios. They're pretty self-explanatory on search. If you search for those are collections of people's portfolios they've just submitted. So you can actually just see people's case studies and portfolios, and there'll be much more links later. Okay, so here's like the big slide here, is that companies don't really care what exactly you made for your portfolio projects, right? They just want to see that you've been engaging in a thoughtful and user-centered design process, so you can do the same for them if they hire you, right? This is what I was saying earlier. That like the exact thing that you made is not as important as showing how you made it, right? The process critique. This is not as important as this, right? That is the most important thing, is showing how you did it. Of course, it helps if you have a good idea, right? Like, having all else being equal, a better idea, a more original idea is going to be better. Not just because the final product is better, but a better idea or a more personally motivated idea is better because you can tell a better story about it, right? Because you're going to be motivated to do the process better if you have a more original and more interesting idea, and one that goes with your point of view and personal style and stuff. Okay, so remember to keep that in mind, right? That it's not really about exactly what you made, it's about how you made it.